Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another Writers Chat Tuesday, where craft connects community. I am one of your co-hosts, Brandy Bro, and I'm here with my other co-host, Norma Poor, and we are really glad that you are here with us today. If you would like to be here live on Tuesdays to join in the chat, ask your questions, and get to partake in our after party, which is never recorded, but we have, then you can do that. Join us on Facebook. It is a group. We are called Writers Chat members. Answer the questions. We'll let you in, and you can get all of the event notices to be here live. So we have a great show today. I'm going to let Norma tell you all about it and introduce our guests. So Norma?
Thank you, Brandy. So glad to be here. Excuse me. And today we have our writer's journey, and Martin Johnson is joining us for that. Martin is the survivor of a severe car accident resulting in traumatic brain injury, legal blindness, and partial paralysis on the left side. He is an award winning Christian screenwriter and recently completed his first nonfiction book. Martin is also a regular columnist for Almost an Author and Walk Humbly, which is on pathos.com. And he's done both of these for several years. And you can connect with Martin at martinthomasjohnson.com. Martin, we are so glad you're here. And let's get started, shall we? So, Martin, just tell us a little bit about your accident and how long it took you to bounce back, if you will, from that.
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me this morning. It's an honor to have this opportunity to share my story. Now, originally, I was actually in college majoring in English so I could be a trained writer, so to speak. And I had a severe accident on Easter Sunday, 1997, when somebody ran a red light and T-boned a Mustang. And the grill of that car hit me in the head, which shattered my skull, which I don't know if you can see with the hat. I've got a big dent on the right side of my head. Now, while they were doing emergency brain surgery to move those bone fragments, I stroked out. I had 15-minute mini strokes. Now, if you know anything about a stroke, it basically kills a part of your brain. Now, for me, the frontal lobe of my brain was basically dead, not active. There was no brain activity. So back then, what the doctors used to do was remove the dead part of the brain. If you've ever seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where they remove parts of the brain to try to fix schizophrenia and all that, they did that for people who were like stroke survivors like me, in an attempt to get the brain to rewire itself so there'd be some type of function. So that was March 1997. And after I came to, a week after the accident, I hit the reality of not being able to do the things I used to do, and I couldn't go back to college to finish my English degree. So it roughly took, I'd say, about a month in the hospital, then another month in rehab, then another, I'd say, 2 months in kind of like a transitional living center. So all in all, it took me about 11 months to go from being in the hospital to being able to get back out on my own. But of course, I still wasn't able to go back to college to finish my degree.
Well, so sorry to hear how bad of an accident was. I've known since I first met you that you were in an accident. I never realized it was that bad. Um, God surely has blessed you by leaving you here with us. Now, at what point I know you said you couldn't go back to school, But at what point or how long ago did you feel the call or the desire to start on this writing journey?
Well, it's kind of funny. When I was in high school, I wanted to go to college to be a screenwriter because I like telling stories like most of us writers do. Now, after the accident, due to my disability, I could not type anymore. So, of course, I thought writing was over. But late 90s, technology advanced where they had things that I could do to write. And I just felt like, not to brag on myself, that I had a great story to tell and it would make a great movie. So, roughly, probably about a year and a half after the accident, I felt God lead me back to writing. So, I had to go through the journey of like, all right, God, how do you want me to do this? Because I can't type. I mean, what good is a writer who can't type? I can't write. And he led me to the software and I started writing and I wrote my first screenplay, which later became an award-winning screenplay in Georgia, I will say. And just over the years, it's just kind of, we all have those God moments where God kind of shows us. And that's when I decided to jump back on the writing train, all, albeit kind of a different means.
And you mentioned you write screenwriting. You're a screenwriter. Have you written more than just the one?
I have currently written two completed screenplays, and I'm actually talking with a literary manager now for our screenwriters to get those out. Now, it's kind of hard because the type of screenwriting I feel led to do when I write fiction isn't per se for the church. I believe in writing more of inspirational stories for the general audience with kind of Christian and inspirational under themes.
Right, right. So you're reaching out to the general market from a Christian worldview. Is
Correct.
that correct? And in your bio that I just read, you've also completed a Christian nonfiction book. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I sure can. And it kind of, the book, Bold Humanity, kind of goes back to my accident. And it's just the life lessons that God has taught me because before that accident, I was the typical wild child college student. I was in college, but I was still experiencing the partying and the drinking and all that. And I had friends who were Christians who were kind of like trying to correct me and telling me to get back on the right track. And of course, me and my pride, like, nah, dude, look, I've got things under control. I got a good job. I'm doing good in college. I can handle doing what I'm doing. But it took God humbling me through that accident. I mean, to be 22 years old and not even be able to walk to the bathroom by yourself will put the fear of God in anybody. To not be able to feel one side of your body. I mean, I couldn't feed myself. I couldn't, when I was in the wheelchair, I couldn't even wheel myself around the wheelchair because I didn't have my left hand to do it. So if I got in a wheelchair, I only have my right. I basically just do circles in a wheelchair.
So
So
you learned to do donuts in a wheelchair, huh?
real easily. But I will never forget sitting in the rehabilitation hospital, looking at the other patients at the table. Most of them were kind of older seniors, and just thinking, God, am I here? I'm not that bad off. Why am I in this hospital? And while I was sitting there, all of a sudden I start feeling a sensation in my lap. I'm like, what is that? And I looked down and there was milk and cereal that I had been eating in my lap. I didn't realize that the left side of my face was drooping so much that my cereal and milk was falling out of my mouth into my lap,
Wow.
and I couldn't even feel it. So that was just all these little things were just God humbling me. And sometimes that's what it takes. God has to humble us, not just to scare us, but to knock us down, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And that's what the book focuses on. What does it mean for us to humble ourselves?
Sounds like a great book. And I love, Martin, that you use your story to encourage others and that you're not bitter to God about that. And go ahead.
Uh, just to be honest and vulnerable, there are times when I have been very bitter, but God understands and He forgives when those times when we lash out at God, like, why me, God? You know,
Absolutely. And I'm sure all of us have been through things that at times we get angry at God. Why me? Or why this? Why now? Why? And I love, though, that your transparency with your struggles and how you use that to motivate others, especially writers. You do a great job. And as I said at the opening, you are a columnist for two different organizations and contribute great encouragement through what you write there. Tell me, I know you've mentioned that you can't type. What are some of the biggest struggles, biggest hurdles you've had to overcome in this writing journey?
I think a lot of it, and has to do with something that all writers experience, is confidence. How am I gonna, like I said, I didn't finish college because of my disability. I'm like, so God, how am I gonna be a writer? I don't have that English degree. Now, I did go back and take a professional writing course, but still, I still lack confidence like most writers. Now, due to the brain injury, I'm very, very prone to depression. So that's one of my big struggles. And I know a lot of my writer friends who aren't disabled experience it themselves. So,
From what I've gathered at the different conferences, in fact, I think Stephen James spoke on this a few years back when he was the opening keynote at Blue Ridge. The huge percentage of authors and writers that are battle with depression because it's a lonely, it's a solo craft most of the time. Tell us about some of the blessings that you've experienced since your accident.
oddly, since my accident, it's just a whole new world that, I mean, before my wreck, I was into the club scene. I was into gaming. I was a big gamer back before esports took off. I mean, me and my friends, we that's what we did in our spare times. We played games, we partied. Now, due to the brain injury, I can no longer play games that good. I don't drink anymore. So, one of the biggest blessing is God has removed me from that clubbing lifestyle. And since I lost interest in gaming, that gave me more opportunity and desire to write and do other things like exercise, bike, get healthier. But it took God humbling me and taking some things away from me and abilities away from me to show me new things that have become a blessing over the years.
How would you, um, what would you describe as your biggest blessing, I guess you would say, in just, it can be in life in general or in your writing? What would you, How would you describe that to us?
Honestly, I would say the lifestyle change, like, because I was so unhealthy before. And because God forced me to change the way I live and the things I do, now I'm over twice as old as I was when I had my accident, but I'm in better health physically and mentally than I was then. So that's just the biggest, really big lesson to me personally.
Mhm. Now you cycle a lot. Tell us a little bit about that and how you got into cycling, bicycling.
Again, it's kind of crazy how God works because I'm an army brat. I grew up living around the world. I mean, I learned how to ride a bike in Italy.
Cool.
I mean, my parents and I, as a family, we would get on our bikes and go biking out in the countryside. I can still remember when I first learned how to ride a bike without training wheels. So the only way I could stop was literally to ram my bike into these little walls because I didn't understand how to brake. And as I got older, I biked a little bit like a little kid in school, but that went away. Now in college, my roommate used to bike some, but I didn't bike. Now after the accident, I wanted to be more physically active to try to stay kind of get in shape. And for me, the first go-to thing was biking because, I couldn't use the left side of my body that well. So with biking, as you pedal, you use your right leg to help move your left side. So I'd figure I'd try it. And lo and behold, my health got better. And now here some 20 plus years later, physical therapists and a lot of rehabilitations facilities implement cycling programs because biking, they've learned rewires your brain so your brain can work better.
Nice.
But yet God led me that way after my accident.
Right. I love how he leads us to things that at the time we don't realize perhaps their significance or the in our lives, but over time we do. So about how far do you cycle today?
I have different routes. My longest ride right now is running at 42 and a quarter miles. But I do have a shorter route that might be 8 miles. I like to change it up
Mhm.
just to basically I get bored doing the same route over and over. And of course the weather may affect, like this past weekend I wanted to bike 42 miles, but we had a chance of severe storms and I knew if I had done it, I'd be coming back about the time we were supposed to have a severe storm, so I biked in the morning instead. So by the time I got home and the storms came, I was done.
Right. While you're out biking, do you get ideas for writing, for your columns, for things like that while you're out?
Yeah, I think I'm part of that unique writing tribe that gets more inspiration from nature and being outside. So I get a lot of like inspiration, not necessarily while I'm on the bike, but like when I stop to take little breaks to rest. Like there are times, like on a hot day, I might stop and rest in the shade under a tree just to cool off. And, while you're sitting there broken physically, exhausted, God could talk to us more.
Mhm.
So that's why I get a lot of ideas.
What a great point that when we are at the end of ourselves, we hear God better, don't we?
Yeah, I
More
think that's
Yeah.
a
often than
way
not.
of his God's way of maybe getting us out of the way so that he can get through to us. Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's more of us going to God with God. I need this. Tell me this. Do this. Do this. Do this. Do this. But when you're exhausted physically, when you're hot, when you're tired, when you're hungry, you can listen more instead of saying God. And that's just in my experience. I don't know about with y'all.
Mm.
right? Yes, I think that's a great point. Um,
We have a question in
let,
the chat if you don't mind.
yep.
I don't mind.
How do you work through the hard days when you are down or depressed and can't write? I deal with blurry vision that comes and goes, but it is more prevalent when working on the computer. I have found the app Willow that allows me to do voice to text, but it's frustrating to not be able to write when I want to.
I agree, and I have days like that. Like I've had ex recently, I had an extended period of time after having COVID last year where I didn't want to write. And for me, it's just I have to get outside and I have to just be still and kind of basically lean into God. Like, God, what do you want me to write? If you want me to do this, give me the inspiration, give me the motivation. And I find the more still I get, instead of trying to force it, it just tends to come back more naturally on its own. But the more I force it, the harder it is. I don't know if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense
And
to me
that's
too.
and that's really true for all of us when we're at a place where we're tired or things just aren't quite flowing like we want to. You're right, Martin. We all tend to just try to push through instead of maybe stepping back and taking that break, rest our eyes, rest our body, maybe go outside and just sit outside for a minute and get re-inspired.
I know for some people, they can tend to get a little bit down and depressed when they keep trying to push through because they're doing what they think God wants them to do. When the reality is that they're doing it in their own strength, or they're really doing their own thing, which they've slapped label on for God instead of God leading them to do what God really wants them to do. So they can end up getting depressed because they're out of a little bit in one way or another, out of that alignment with what God would really have them do. And so that depression and struggle and not be able to do it may be a flag to say, hey, sit down, come, be still, and know that I am God, and rest and let me lead you.
That is one of the things I've really experienced a lot lately. Like you mentioned, I write the column on patheos.com. So that's got like a huge worldwide audience, and I really don't see how God has given me that platform, but He has. So I write uh, the column for people around the world, and I don't just write for the general Christian audience. My column kind of blurs into Judaism. So most of my followers, believe it or not, are Jewish, and I'm not Jewish. So I kind of get intimidated, and in my own head, I'm like, I'm not Jewish. So obviously, I got to do a lot of research. So I will spend hours upon hours researching things from Jewish history and from the Jewish faith, and it overwhelms me. So I go outside. I have a park outside, and I will just go sit and just say, all right, God, show me. And I could be sitting outside in the sunlight, not doing anything, just sitting there for 5 minutes or 20 minutes and come back in and just like everything aligns perfect, like, and then everything's smooth. So, but being still, it's just like the psalmist said, be still.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Sometimes we think we have to be busy for God. There are times where we have to be busy doing things for God, and then there are times when we have to be still to see what God wants us to do for him.
absolutely. And I've come to learn this somewhat the hard way that there's a difference in doing something for God and doing it with God. Would you agree with that?
Exactly. And I think
100%.
a lot of times we use that for God to justify what we want. And I know you've seen it, Norma. There are a lot of Christians who are just out there. They're out there. They could be something totally contradictory towards the teachings of Jesus and Christianity, but They just, well, I'm doing this for God, so it's got to be right. And
Exactly.
that's just the way the devil leads us astray.
Right? If he can get us busy for God, then we're not accomplishing the work with God that he intends. Um, Leslie actually had another question. She said, how do you get your family to understand your down days? My
Um,
family does not understand and think I'm just stuck. Sometimes I am not. I'm just connecting to God and gaining strength. So, how do you get your family to understand?
Honestly, I don't try to get my family to understand, and I don't try to get my friends to understand, and vice versa. I don't try to understand other people with disabilities because there's a saying in the brain injury community, every brain injury is different. So it just like your brain's different, your fingerprints are different. It's unique to you. My family has come to the point when I say, hey, I just want to get away or I need some downtime. And they respect that because they've learned over the past 20 plus years that I am different and they will never understand that. And that's the biggest thing people who aren't disabled have to understand is it's a disability. You're not supposed to be able to understand it. I mean, people all the time like, how do you drive if you're legally blind? It's the proof, my proof of vision, but straight ahead. They just don't understand it. I hope that
Exactly.
helps.
Dennis asked a question about what types of writing you do, which I answered him. You write articles, screenplays, and just finished an inspirational nonfiction. But then his second question was, what are the focuses of the organizations which you write regularly? So, what's the focus of Pathos and Almost an Author?
Now, almost author has many different kind of focuses depending on the different our column. I know some help authors learning the craft, others help authors building their platform, others help authors finding inspiration. And the column that I write for Almost Author basically support for writers with disabilities, and hopefully I try to make it where writers without disabilities can kind of connect to my column. Now, the Pathos column that I write is basically a faith-based column. And I try to blend it between the general Christian market and the Jewish perspective together to show how they're connected. While I look at current events, whether it's weather, the economy, political things sometimes. Like this weekend, my focus was on, I used the news subject of the earthquakes in Indonesia and then the hurricane in Hawaii. But I looked at what the Christian faith and the Jewish faiths talk about this world and events that are going to happen as this temporary fades. Now, I do write or contribute to another magazine that focuses on faith and fitness. Now, I don't write regularly for, I just contribute articles every now and then. Now, that focuses on what it means to be healthy spiritually and physically, since being physically healthy is a big part of my, I say, concern and background. I hope that answers the questions for Dennis.
Mhm. And I can testify that Martin's articles for Almost an Author are encouraging whether you have a disability or not. He does a great job of using a current event to support the points he's trying to make, and how, even though maybe the current event has nothing to do with writing, there's still something to learn from it. Martin does a great job at that. If you have not read any of his articles, head over to almostanauthor.com/writing with a disability. And I'll put that in the chat here in a little bit. Martin, what is something that you would warn us upcoming authors and writers about?
I think the biggest, I guess, concern that I have about a lot of up and coming authors, writers, and this is something that I see a lot, not just with writers, but in other areas of life, there are no shortcuts. Now, I say that because I'm speaking from experience. A lot of us writers, we can think that because we have the great big idea that we're going to get an agent, we're going to get published right away. And we don't want to put in the man hours, so to speak. We don't want to learn the craft. We don't want to go to conferences and network. And even with the networking, some of the people go to conferences just so they can kind of meet an agent and tell their story and thinking that if they befriend that agent, that the agent's automatically going to sign them. But there's no shortcut cuts. You can't take these shortcuts. You have to go through the motions on the writing journey as we all have, and I'm still on.
And that's true. Sometimes there have been times even when I've heard God say, you've not put enough work in yet. Keep going." And great point with that. Excuse me. What, aside from not taking shortcuts, what would be some advice, say two or three things that you would give your younger self when you were just starting out on this writing journey?
Keep learning the craft. And the other is get the experience. I went through a writing course with Jerry B. Jenkins, and I'll never forget some of the advice he gave. Is like, you don't start your writing career with a published book. You've got to start small, even if it's writing for your local newspaper. It might be contributing to your local church newsletter. We have to start small to grow our writing muscles before we do something big like a book or a screenplay.
And that can tie back into exercise too, right? We don't start
Exactly.
out running a marathon or biking a marathon. We start out doing the little things first. Wouldn't you agree?
Exactly. That's
And
why I tend to bike shorter routes before I do the big long ride, 42 miles. I will bike like an 18-mile ride a few days before that just to kind of help condition me and get my body ready for it.
nice. What are, um, I just lost my train of thought. I am so sorry. What do you do? I know you said you get out in nature. Are there other things that you do maybe when you maybe you're not full on stuck, but you feel something's maybe just not jiving right? I know that's an old term. I'm sorry. But something's just not flowing right. What's your process to fixing that?
In regards to writing,
Mm-hmm.
I do something that I think all of us writers do at some point is let it step back, take a beat, stop working on it, just step back, take a beat, and pray about it. Because I know for me, like when I try to force any of my columns, if I keep on forcing, I keep on hitting that brick wall. But if I take a step back and take some time, maybe things a lot of times God will lead me in a completely different direction for a subject to write because it's just like that's just wasn't his will. So I always believe in taking a beat, stepping back instead of trying to pound on.
I think Jerry Jenkins used to use another old term and say, let it percolate for a while. Tell us a little bit about your writing process and any success that you've had.
As for writing process, I'm gonna go ahead and put it out there. Don't shoot me, but I'm an outliner. I write mainly most of the time when I'm I'm writing nonfiction. So for me, especially my brain injury, I have to have my points organized, or else I'll just be going off on tangents left and right. So I have to outline. Now, my one of my biggest writing successes I've had as a nonfiction writer was I wrote an article for Focus on the Family a few years ago about having disability and what that life is about. And I won my very first Seller Award at the Blue Ridge Christian Writers Conference for it. And it's been some time since then, but that was like one of my biggest successes as a writer.
What an honor. Now, did they share that? Did Focus on the Family put that article in, excuse me, in their magazine?
They had it on, it was on their online, it's one of the online articles, and I actually got a lot of positive response from the disabled community. I ended up connecting with a gentleman who has not down, he has MS and he's also an aspiring writer. And he's like, you just don't know how much that encouraged me because being disabled comes with a lot of stereotypes. You know, they're different for different abilities or disabilities. So knowing that that article helped people or encouraged somebody with a disability was, to me, a blessing and kind of affirmation for I was doing what God wanted me to do.
How, what has been your, or what is your favorite part of writing, if you have one?
I this is gonna sound kind of I don't know, it's gonna sound kind of probably cliche. I enjoyed the creating part, you know, and just when you see all the things come together, like I don't consider myself a smart guy, you know, so when I see things God's showing me, whether it's something in health or something in the spiritual realm, come together and how God helps me connect the dots. Because when you're writing, especially as an outliner, you're connecting. You start out with your theme and your message, but God has to help you connect all these dots, like we do in an outline. You got your introduction, you got your theme, and then you want to have your conclusion and your takeaway. So those, for me, is just one of the greatest part. For me, just seeing God help me create something that I'm not qualified to do. You know, and I think that goes back to how God created us as people, especially creatives. We feel a personal sense of satisfaction when we create something because we were created in God's image and God's a creator, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Excuse me. Leslie had another question here. When you feel God has put a project on your heart, but you feel it is very difficult to write, should you take a step back and focus on other projects when you know that that project is just as important and you should and could impact so many if you finish it?
Me personally, and I'm kind of conflicted on this question because with my brain injury, I'm not a multitasker. I have to focus on what I'm doing and finish it. But at the same time, I know if God's telling me to do something, I can trust Him to supply what I need. I can trust Him to help me get through that. So
Yeah,
I'm kind of like, I think for me, best is better to trust God than to try to multitask and take on too much. I hope that answers your question.
let me follow it up with this question. Have you ever started something, and I think you've kind of already sort of answered this, but have you started something and in the middle of it, even if it seemed like it was kind of flowing, has God interrupted you and turned you in a different direction? Can you tell us a little bit
All
about
the
that?
time. And all the time because I'm kind of like, I'll say pig-headed, like when I write my Pathos column or I write my column for Almost an Author, I go in with something that I feel strongly about writing. But when I start researching, I see that it doesn't really work, and the takeaway is not going to be what I feel it needs to be. God leads me in another direction. Like with my Pathos column, I like to look at Jewish words in the Old Testament that I think may mean one thing that would fit my theme and link my two relevant news clips. But the more and more I research it, I'm like, it's not it. So God has to lead me to either change the word or change the news subject. I mean, I've been up at sometimes at 1 o'clock in the morning writing my Pathos column, and I'm not one of those night owl writers. I'm an early bird, but I know God is leading me in another direction, so I stay up and out of obedience.
Absolutely. So when you're not writing, we know you like to cycle. What else do you do when you're not writing? What are some of your other hobbies?
Now, hobbies, of course, like most writers, I like to read, and I really enjoy exercising and working out. In fact, I'm going in the process of getting certified to be a personal trainer, health coach, nutrition, because this all goes back to that accident. God used it to humble me and to force me to be a healthier person, live a healthier lifestyle. So I really geek out over health things and nutrition things. And of course, reading and pretty much anything outside, whether it's hiking. I may go for just a walk. I walk a lot. If you're friends with me on Facebook, you see I walk anywhere from 10 to I think the most I've ever had is 60,000 steps in one day.
What do you like to read, Martin? What genres do you like to read?
Oddly enough, this is another way God changed me. Now, before my accident, I read a lot of fiction. I was one of the geeky kids who read all the comic books and sci-fi stuff. But post my accident, nowadays I read more nonfiction, more like Christian living or books and articles on health. So I read more nonfiction now as opposed to the old Martin before the wreck was more of fiction reading.
You have any, before we invite our audience to come back on and ask any questions, do you anything you want to say that we haven't covered so far in our talk so far?
Um, yes, show yourself some grace. I think a lot of times as writers, we beat ourselves up when we make mistakes, whether there's a typo there, whether we don't get that assignment as a writer, if you write articles like I do, or if you don't get to see the success you thought you'd have as a writer. Show yourself some grace. I mean, we've all been there. I mean, I deal with disappointment daily as a writer, and I know others do. Just show yourself some grace.
I like that. I don't remember who said it. I'm pretty sure it was a guest that was on here, but the phrase that stuck in my mind, go at the pace of God's grace. Whatever the grace is he gives you, whatever that pace he gives you to go at, as long as you're in his peace and his grace, go at that pace.
I
What do you
like
think?
that.
You like that? All right, if y'all want to come back on camera, and if anyone else has any questions for Martin, feel free to hop on and ask. Anybody? Anybody? Not be shy. While we're waiting for people to pop on, Martin, who is your favorite author
My
and
favorite,
why?
my favorite author for Christian nonfiction,
Sure.
believe it or not, is going to be, I don't know if y'all have ever heard of him, a guy named Kyle Idleman.
Mm-mm.
He is an associate pastor at a church in Kentucky. He writes a lot of books that challenge Christians to grow in their faith instead of just, get comfortable. His first book was called Not a Fan, that looked at what it meant to be a true follower of Jesus, as opposed to just a fan
Oh, wow.
who
Mhm.
likes the teachings of Jesus. And he's got another book out called Gods of War. Now you think that might be a game title, but it's actually a title that talks about the gods of this that who at war for our attention. The god of success, the gods of food, the gods of recreation. These we don't look at them as gods or idols, but we tend to give these things more attention than we do God. So do you see the implication? Now, Kyle Allen is my favorite nonfiction writer. My favorite fiction author is Jerry B. Jenkins.
Mhm. I had the privilege, as Rachel did, she's here today, and a couple other friends of ours, we actually met him in person at the Right to Publish conference a couple years ago when it was their second year of being back open, or their first year, I guess, relaunching the conference live after COVID. And a neat guy. He is hysterical. I was part of his guild for a little while, as I'm sure you probably were. And his humor didn't come across like it did at this conference. He's a pretty hysterical guy.
I actually had a chance to meet Jerry at the very last Writing for the Soul conference in Colorado Springs in 2014. I was part of that nonfiction craftsman.
Mhm.
So we all had breakfast, got to talk to him, and he's very encouraging, humorous.
Yep. So you got to see that funnier side of him as well.
I did.
And this year, I don't know if you were aware, but back in April, I think it was April or May, he has relaunched having conferences in Colorado again. I would have loved to have gone, but that wasn't God's plan. As we wrap up today, Martin, any parting words for us?
I think the parting word is something that we hear a lot is keep going, whether it's pitching, querying agents. I'm getting ready to start querying another agent this week. Learning the craft, keep querying, and keep networking.
Awesome.
That's what I have.
Well, thank you, Martin. So glad you were here. One last chance. Any questions for Martin from anybody in the audience? All right. Well, Martin, thank you so much. What an inspiration. Sure appreciate you joining us today. And just thank you for being here and sharing with us your writing journey.
Thanks for having me.
Brandy, you want to tell us about next week?
Next week, we're going to have an open mic. It's a check-in, how your writing is going. So it's a chance to talk about if it's going well, if it's going not going well. Maybe God's changed plans on you. It's going to be a good time. So come on and join us next week.
Absolutely. And again, thank you, those of you that were here live. If you're watching the replay, thank you so much. And be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And then head on over to Facebook and check out Writers Chat members page and join our happy band. It's not really a band, it's a writing group, but anyway, there you go. Join us or watch the replay. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. Y'all have a great week and we'll see you next time.
And everybody here, stick around for the after party.
Absolutely. Bye bye.